Good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then available on demand. And we're available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple Television, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, and of course YouTube and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Monday, January 2nd, 2023, and we are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Well, Happy New Year. And I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson. And this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR, but designed for our LGBTQ plus community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 37 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television, news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor FayWhat. She is a radio and television personality and has a popular blog and YouTube channel aiming to unite the L and the G together. She's a hostess and MC for many South Florida events, an animal advocate, and owner of Fay's Fur Family. Also, make sure to catch the FayWhat Show, the first LGBTQ plus morning show, Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern, online or on your smart television. Faye, by the way, was the winner of the 2022 SFGN Best Local Television Personality.
Woohoo!
FayWhat?
Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. And I have already broken my New Year's resolution, and I'm just going to be okay with that, right? So my resolution was to curse less this year, and I've already dropped F-bombs all over. And you know what? That's okay.
Well, that's an effed up resolution.
It really is, right? That's not an attainable one. Also, folks, if you missed the FayWhat show this morning, make sure you go back on demand and grab it, all right? Roku, Apple Television, Fire, Amazon Fire, it's all on there. We had the incredible Miss Athena Dion on the show this morning, and she talked about everything, her love life, what queen she likes to work with, what queen she don't like to work with. All the tea is right there, so make sure that you watch it anytime on demand. Next, let's welcome anchor Dr. Bobby Huen. Huen. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Huen? It's like I feel like I'm sneezing. Bobby Huen. Bless you, Faye. Is the owner and principal mediator of BH Conflict Resolution Services. As a certified civil and family mediator, Bobby helps individuals, families, and businesses resolve their legal disputes nationwide. Outside of work, Bobby's a gamer, a Lego builder, a foodie, and an art collector. He's always open to chat if you see him on the drive. Welcome, Bobby. If you're such a foodie, how come you've never brought us anything?
Well, I didn't even know we can bring food here.
Gays eat.
Well,
at least the women do. The men.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, what am I going
to do?
The tops do. Yes, exactly. The bottoms eat salad. Anyways, Happy New Year, Faye. Happy New Year, everyone. And let's welcome anchor Amy McGrotty. Amy was a real estate attorney for almost 30 years before she transitioned into real estate sales, and she is now known as the real estateologist. She works alongside John Castelli and Rod Blacklock at Castelli Real Estate Services in Wilton Manors as part owner and residential and commercial sales. Amy studied and played taiko drums for a decade. She practices bass guitar in the privacy of her home and is a blacksmith hobbyist at the Guild in Pompano Beach and in the privacy of her own shop. She has previously provided pro bono legal services to people in need and now serves on the board of the Broward Realtors Charitable Foundation and the Outshine LGBTQ plus film festival. Sorry about that. Welcome, Amy. Happy New Year.
Darling.
Welcome, Amy. Not fair. You're more lesbian than me. Not fair.
That is not true.
More lesbian than me.
I'm more butch than you.
Oh.
But are you a top?
Oh, yes.
Oh, well.
Our bottoms all the way. All right.
There is a lot of power from the bottom, true. Okay, so I'm going to plug the Outshine Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. You guys, we're coming to Miami. We have 2 film festivals a year. And Miami's coming up in April, and October it comes to Broward. But we do stuff in Broward, too. And the Charitable Foundation, if you know anyone in need, we have a lot of money in the Realtor Foundation to give away to people in need. Emergency housing is usually the ask, but sometimes furniture or something to help people. We just give them a lift up. It's a one-time lift.
That's beautiful.
You know, Amy, it's the first time you've anchored here at Queer News Tonight. I have to plug in this observation. A woman business owner on Wilton Drive, a lesbian woman business owner, pretty unusual. You're in a unique,
I think there's 3 of you.
kind of a lonely club.
4. There's few of you.
We can name them
I can
on
name
one
them.
hand.
They're friends. Yeah.
Any thoughts about expanding diversity in Wilton Manors?
I don't know. I mean, I'm grateful to John Castelli to making the offer to me to bring me on board with him and Rod, but I don't know how. It's tough. It's, you know, we're always the people who are looking for more women on everything, you know, on the boards and the film festivals, whatever.
Well, good.
No.
It's got to be a commitment for all of us in 2023. More diversity in our LGBTQ community.
Oh, so now let's welcome anchor Dale Stine. With a background in music and the arts, he's a well-known photographer, famous for his photographs of internationally acclaimed DJs, drag personas, and other entertainers, including our very own FayWhat.
Yeah.
He's presently the director of music ministry at Unity on the Bay, as well as moderator of South Florida's largest LGBTQ plus Facebook group, Miami Gay List, which can be found on Instagram as @GayListOfficial. An activist with multiple LGBTQ plus organizations, Dale is also currently vice chair of Miami Beach's Human Rights Committee. Good evening, Dale.
Well, thank you, Amy, and it's great to be here at the table with everyone, and also congratulations on Michael Rucker for the film festival, because I met him, I photographed him like in the middle of the pandemic, but that's a great get.
Yeah, he started today.
Oh, actually, he's with the film festival. He's taking over what Mark Gilbert was doing for the interim.
His interim, yeah.
Anyway, so my moment was about you and the film festival. Okay.
You don't have a moment for you? Aren't you doing something really big this week?
I am. I'm doing a photo shoot this week with FayWhat. Finally.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Finally, we're getting around to another one. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Monday, January 2nd, 2023.
I know it doesn't.
It's really hard to
right out of our mouths, right? All right. Well, first we queer up South Florida and Florida. Big changes for Pride Fort Lauderdale, including resignation of Executive Director Kevin Clevenger. South Florida Gay News broke the news yesterday, written by John Hayden, evaluating the Pride of America's events for February. His reporting suggested that there are financial and other crisis issues, as described in the article, that are requiring significant changes to the event just weeks before it was planned to take place. Documents that were obtained by SFGN show the event, which is run by Pride Fort Lauderdale and replaces the usual Pride Fort Lauderdale event this year, has been behind schedule for months. The deteriorating situation began reaching critical mass on December 19th. Just days before Christmas, the city of Fort Lauderdale stepped in and offered to provide a move off of the planned Fort Lauderdale Beach location to Los Olis's Intercoastal Promenade Park as a cost-saving measure. The Pride Board voted to accept that offer last week. Pride Executive Director Kevin Clevenger reportedly had suggested for weeks that he may resign. In an emergency meeting last week, Clevenger actually tendered his resignation. Sources on the Pride board say that he will now have limited duties dealing only with sponsors and other support-like functions of Pride of the Americas. The SFGN story also reports on the change of the 3-day beach festival to only Saturday on the beach, with Friday night a party in Wilton Manors and Sunday a pool party. Kitty Meow, the entertainment chairman of Pride and longtime host at Hotspots Magazine Happening Out television network, has also resigned. While longtime Pride president Mike Martorell had previously temporarily resigned, he returned to his position and will now be the leader of what's next for Pride Fort Lauderdale. To help us all understand the story, the SFGN community editor and reporter of this breaking news story, John Hayden, is with us tonight to discuss the ongoing issues of the Pride of the Americas and the future of Pride Fort Lauderdale. The LGBTQ plus community has supported this event through 3 years of delays because of pandemic. John, welcome to Queer News Tonight.
Good evening, Al. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
And to you. Well, first, your story was quite in depth about the issues of what's happening at Pride of Americas. Why don't you kind of summarize for us your story? I imagine it's going to publish this week in SFGN. It's on digital online now, but kind of summarize what you found, you learned.
Well, you know, it's confirming and getting documentation of things that have been whispered around the community for several months now. I've got 2 very key documents, the minutes from their regular December 19th board meeting and their memo that was circulated by a contractor. It was that was evaluating the situation. That was back on November 2nd, about 100 days before Pride was supposed to start. And I would say the contractor was being surly, but he was really just calling out in a very unambiguous, I don't care whose feelings I hurt type of way. In this memo, he called them the timeline that they had set out for themselves with 100 days to go. He calls it insane. And when you think about it, it absolutely is. There was no plan for where things were going to go. He noted that the people that are hired by Pride Board and their staff have not been using the experts that they're bringing in to help launch this, what he called a monster. And it is a monster event to try and get off, especially when you're trying to market it to the entire hemisphere. It's just damning. And what's even worse is, for Pride, is that he calls them out for their petty and personal grudges. That's a quote from the memo, from an outsider to the Pride board. It's absolutely amazing what's in there. Then on December 19th, they had their board meeting. Rumors of resignation, although they weren't recorded in the minutes, were in there. But even there, they're saying, we still don't have a map. We still don't have this. We still don't have everything locked down for the way it's going to look. And then that map would have been rendered useless because then they decided to move away from South Beach, or not South Beach, South Fort Lauderdale Beach. To give people some context of where that is, it's down at the very far end of the beach where previous Prides have been, but also like where Tortuga Music Festival takes place. So this is a place that is designed to hold large events, large activations, and 10,000 people, tens of thousands of people. This new park is not designed for that. Then on December 22nd, there was essentially what can only be called a come to Jesus meeting with the city, Visit Lauderdale, and Pride board representatives that I know of being in there. And they just basically said, okay, the city said, we will give you this park for free. Now, of course, they still have to spend $250,000 on the build-up and all that, but the space itself is now going to be free, which is a huge savings. There's also rumors to be discussions with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department about donating their services, which would be a huge cost saving, or at least a discount. Now, people I've talked with off the record, I can't name the names, but several people are saying they haven't heard about it, and this is on the Fort Lauderdale police side. of the discussion. So,
John,
there's so much in the air right now.
I want to ask about that specific question. Of course, Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out, produces the Stonewall Pride Festival in full disclosure in June. The issue when reading your article talks about the Fort Lauderdale Police Department in terms of providing services for free. In your investigation of that, is the police department, are you aware of them participating in providing services or not providing services?
They're going to provide services. That's just a given. The question is, how much is it going to cost? And I believe there are Fort Lauderdale City Commissioners who are working with the police department and trying to sort of be almost an intermediary with the union and the groups that organize the police for their overtime. Because remember, it's all overtime. This isn't police just on their regular beats hanging around. They're hiring, in addition to a regular security company, they're also hiring police at overtime rates to make sure everything stays safe. And honestly, that's the key thing, and that's one of the cost things that has gone up. As you mentioned about Pride or Stonewall last year, security costs doubled for police, and that's because there's so many outside threats.
But isn't that something that's usually in place way before 100 days? And we're less than 100 days away for this thing.
Yeah, we are at about 40 days away from it now. And yes, those things should be in place. But
is Boy George still going to be there?
Boy George is still going to be here.
All right, then I'll be there.
Both sides of this come to me and say, yes, Boy George has been paid. He is, ready to come with his entourage. Unfortunately, John Moss won't be coming, so there won't probably be like any fire set under bathroom doors. But other than that, it'll still be good.
That's a funny joke. Go ahead.
No, but can they pull this off? Okay, well, I just said less than 100 days. It's true. It's 40-something days.
I mean, didn't somebody wander the desert 40 days and 40 nights?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes,
Mike, the person, I want to come to Mike in just a moment. One other thing that I'm curious about, I know you've spent countless hours in the investigation of the story and all of the interviews and the back channels of gathering the information. Have any news in terms of what you think is going to happen for the parade that Saturday?
I'm told the parade is still going to happen. In the December 19th minutes that I got a hold of, it was suggested that they scrap the parade and scrap the planned 5K. The 5K is now gone. It is off the schedule. But the parade is still going to happen down A1A, which is the closest any of this is actually going to get to the beach, because the new park is removed a block or two off of the beach. But yes, the parade is still on schedule to happen. But I mean, at this point, it's really a go with the flow, but they seem intent on keeping the parade happening.
And well, we open the conversation now to the specific point that you raised. What do we think about what's happening here
I mean, just like that contractor said, insane. Like I haven't been that close to organizing something to this capacity, right? But it is like right around the corner, and these things aren't set in place. It's almost scary, for them to be able to pull this off. Now, I consider Kevin Clevenger a friend of mine, and I consider him a friend to the community, all right? He's dedicated himself to just representing us in whatever way possible. If he felt for whatever reason that he could not be part of this pride any longer, he's got to have his reasonings for it. I do believe that he will pop up somewhere else, again dedicated to our community, doing the best he can. Is the timing off? For sure. This, like I said, it's scary times, and I've been looking forward to this thing for 3 years.
Yeah. Even prior to this has had a stain on it from the get-go, from my hearing. And I'm talking hearsay here. Mm-hmm. But when you hear enough from enough people, and people who are on the inside in the meetings, then you think, okay, this is not the first pride that has been done in this area. Yes, it's a bigger, grander scale because it's of the Americas, but these people, many people in power, in these positions of power, in these organizations, know how this goes, know what the timing needs to be, know how far in advance things need to be planned. So it's just very odd how it's such a mess.
Dale, can I jump in there for a second?
Sure.
They really don't know how much is involved and what is going on. Some of the November 2nd memo states that the contractor says the Pride board and staff has less experience combined than the people who are supposed to come in here and do this. And Al, you mentioned in when you were doing the story intro that there would be a swimming pool party on Sunday. And that's not confirmed yet, because they're just saying we hope to have something somewhere, because they want to honor a 3-day party that they've promised to sponsors and I believe ticket holders. I mean, people have been buying tickets to this. Whether it becomes Firefest and never happens remains to be seen, which I don't think is going to happen, because there are too many big name sponsors who have poured tens, if not hundreds of $1,000s a piece into this. So I think something's going to happen, but it's not going to be grand. It's going to be smaller than it was supposed to be.
Did you speak to him? Did you get a comment from Mike?
Mike does not want to talk about what's happening right now. He did eventually get back to me after I had already submitted copy. He did get back saying that when it was appropriate, he would talk with me. But right now, no one from the board is going on the record.
But John, my point was really about, people like Mike have been involved in creating Pride festivals for many, many, many years. So how, and not just to call him out, because I think he's great, but there are other people who have been involved in creating these events for many years. So how is it these, and you may not have the answer to this, how is it these people don't know what's going on? I find it very odd. I was thinking about when I heard this latest incarnation of this mess, I was thinking about Miami Beach Pride, and because there was a huge shakedown in Miami Beach Pride last year. And the organization still managed to pull off in just a few months a Pride that happened in September of 2020. My years are getting screwed up. What year?
21.
2020.
Oh.
2020?
No, 21.
21, yes, thank you. Ooh. And then 7 months later, in April, another huge one. And mind you, they had lost well into the hundreds of thousands, close to $200,000. And that's known fact. And they came back and managed to pull off those two very close together and make money and make a success. So it's possible to make these things happen. So I'm wondering then, how is this organization becoming such a disaster?
Well, in many ways, the organizational chaos, as a civil mediator, organizational chaos a lot of times come from lack of communication.
They should have hired you, Bobby. They should have hired you to fix that.
Well, I'm available. So, but lack of communication, lack of clear communication. Sometimes and a clash of personality, most likely. I mean, as John has mentioned, a lot. The memo includes literally people were talking about differing personalities, and sometimes we need to put our personal differences aside. I don't care if Party A thinks Party B is a bitch, or etc., etc., etc. You need to guide them towards a common goal, and that's where facilitation
and leave your ego at the door and make this Pride happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the big issues now. John drops this bombshell on the community in terms of the story. And it seems to me exactly the purpose of South Florida Gay News, by the way, and having some independent reporting and responsibility in community. I think the big issue now is, I heard several months ago that one of the streaming channels were going to broadcast the parade. I don't know if you heard that, and
you told me that.
And the management group at Hotspots Happening Out was told that. I don't believe that came to any fruition. The most important thing now is that it happens. Pride of America has been slated for 3 years. Pandemic was no one's responsibility. Nobody can be held responsible for the pandemic, but we had Pride Fort Lauderdale last year in November. We broadcast the parade along with Tony and Kitty Meow, who has resigned, and I'm very sad to hear Kitty's resignation as entertainment director.
Over health issues.
Over health issues, yes. And we're in a situation where I have confidence in Mike Martorell.
Yes.
He has lots of experience, and if somebody can help pull it back together for the next 40 days, I think Mike is the right person.
Agreed.
And really, that at the end of the day, I think is the only thing that's important. We're living in the gayest place on planet Earth, and so our pride, especially when we slap "of the Americas" on its label, we have an obligation to follow through. And I'm sure that the Pride Board and the committee, and especially Mike, we'll take that obligation seriously. Any final thoughts, John, in terms of your reporting? Your follow-up is going to be any current plans?
Who are you stalking?
I'm not stalking anyone. However, I am putting offers out there to talk to people who are into it. And I think there certainly are a lot more threads to be pulled at this story, and there will certainly be more over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks as we lead up to it, and for sure a few afterwards. You know, one thing I'd like to point out is just the history, what we've seen over the last few months. Last year, Pride had their Pride on Smart Ride weekend, and that was, you know, a huge deal. They had to do it to sponsor. They didn't have to have it that weekend. They chose to have it that weekend, but they had to have a Pride last year to satisfy sponsorship agreements, or else they would have had to return hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they've just kind of been floating to keep their head above water. The same with their when they had their Halloween party opposite the National Task Force Gala the same night back in October. They're just having these things because they have to raise money, they have to meet sponsorships, and so basically everything they've been doing is just to kind of keep their head afloat so they don't even have to give back money. To not lose money on those events is kind of a victory at this point. And to give you a little idea of what it's like to move venues like this, even though you're really only moving about a mile, that would be like the Smart Ride on October 1st deciding, okay, all the plans we have and the infrastructure we have set up between here and Key West, we're going to move it, and now we're going to hold the Smart Ride from Miami across Alligator Alley over to Naples. That's essentially what it is. It's that major of a change to move from one place to the other when you have no infrastructure, no history at that location. Your contractors are going to be caught off guard. It's going to be a really heavy lift and a long 40 days for Mike and the rest of the board and the volunteers.
John, can I commend you also on the story? It was really thought through. I was expecting like a bash fest, I'm sorry, and it was not the case at all. You know, you really covered all the bases, things that a lot of us didn't even know were happening. So I really do appreciate you as a journalist and as a friend.
Thank you, Faye.
Absolutely. And we're going to continue to follow it. One of the things I know the entire LGBTQ community, especially in Broward County, but all over South Florida, are going to do now is we've got to come together and make sure that this happens and is a success. And all of us are committed to making sure that happens. John Hayden, community editor of South Florida Gay News, thank you for being with us tonight at Queer News Tonight.
Thank you, Al.
And now, next, we queer up religion. The anti-LGBTQ plus Pope Benedict is dead. Will we mourn? The Pope Emeritus, who retired from the papacy in 2013, said marriage equality was the product of the Antichrist, and he is no more. Former Pope Benedict XVI died at the age of 95 at a monastery in Vatican City on Saturday. He had been in ill health, according to Vatican officials. Known as a conservative theologian, he left a negative legacy on LGBTQ plus rights and called homosexuality, quote, an intrinsic moral evil, end quote. He was elected to the position in 2005 after the death of Pope John Paul II. His retirement gave way to the rise of Pope Francis, who has been warmer to LGBTQ plus people and has repeatedly called for some inclusion of queer people in the Catholic Church. The ex-Pope's funeral will be held in St. Peter's Square on Thursday, while his body will lie in state at St. Peter's Basilica beginning Monday. According to CNN, even before becoming Pope, Benedict has been a powerful leader in the Church. He was born Joseph Ratzinger in Germany in 1927. Benedict was briefly part of Hitler's youth, although his family detested the Nazis. The outlet notes he was nicknamed Cardinal No after his efforts to stop the liberalization of the Church, including challenges to Catholic teachings on homosexuality and ordaining women as priests. Before becoming pontiff, he used his influence to silence an LGBTQ plus supportive nun and priest. He banned them from working with queer people. He was also criticized for not acting against priests who were charged with child molestation when he was Archbishop of Munich. And I want to add that before he became Pope, he was known for the leadership. He was leading what is called the Congregation for the Doctrinization of the Faith, which is the modern equivalent of the Inquisition.
Ooh, wow.
Anyway, so
are we mourning?
Nope.
Ain't no
nope.
morning for me.
I don't think I'm mourning either. This guy was covering up all kinds of molestation charges, but God forbid if you're gay and you want to marry, he was known as God's Rottweiler, and I like Rottweilers. All right, so there's a problem there. Cardinal No was another thing. His butler had leaked a bunch of paperwork right on him back in 20. Probably what happened.
And leaked.
So his butler leaked some kind of paperwork, and slowly but surely after he resigned. So who knows what was on that documents that were leaked? A la Mar-a-Lago Trump time. So are we mourning?
No.
Yeah.
But more to the point is that his legacy, the thing is that every pope leaves a legacy that is beyond his life. For example, the reason that Benedict became pope is because John Paul II packed his curia, which is kind of like Vatican Congress, if you will, with a lot of conservative archbishops and bishops. And Ratzinger's legacy is that still today, Francis is still dealing with a lot of ultra-conservative leadership inside the church, which do not want to advance any kind of LGBTQ rights or women's rights, want, the doctrine to stay in the 16th century. And that's his legacy right there, which is not pretty, at least in my opinion.
I think for me, will I mourn? Absolutely not. I'm a person of faith. There's a lot of people of faith at the table. I'm a person of faith. I'm Southern Baptist, so it's almost as conservative as you can get in American religion. But I'm also not a fascist. And this Pope was a fascist. Yeah. And when you blow the dog whistle that he for 2 years was a Hitler Youth, at 10 and 12 years old, they were beginning to set the procedure of what Hitler was going to do. By the time he was 13 years old in Nazi Germany, and Hitler had come to full power. It was no longer a democratic process in Germany. The Hitler Youth were participating in building the construction groundwork of the Holocaust. And I just remind everybody, when he says when we say he was a participant in Hitler Youth for 2 years, at a very particularly important time, not in the administration of the Holocaust because he was 13 years old, but in the philosophical grounding of creating philosophy of what he was thinking about. And at 13 years old, in that time period in Germany, they were saying what they were saying about the Jews to create a Holocaust. But they were also creating a policy toward homosexuals of the Pink Star and the Holocaust. And he was right at the heart of that at 13 years old and becomes Pope. Wow. And Germany's
talk about grooming.
Exactly. Celebrated first Pope in over 600 years who grew up learning to hate gay people to support a Holocaust. And that's why you read words connecting gay marriage and the Antichrist. Wow. And the other words that came out of his mouth.
And these are some of the reasons why I'll say it out loud, sometimes have problems with the Catholic Church, period, in general. Because it's supported. I mean, if that's your Pope, it's supported. It's a problem for me, as a person.
And one last thought, and not to live or talk in hyperbole, because it is a big event. This is a big week in his passing. But if we are going to be critical of the words and actions of our leadership, like Donald Trump, creating a January 6th and the other kinds of things that he did, we most certainly can be critical of the Pope who does and spoke the things that he did. Now, I'm speaking in terms of his LGBT issues, but I'm not even talking about the vastness of the contradiction of his gay thought and policy, and then protecting those same priests that are in homosexual abuse of children, and he protected those priests. It boggles the mind of the contradiction here. And if this was Donald Trump, we would hold Donald Trump to a standard. You must be insane if we're not going to hold your Pope to the exact same standard. Am I mourning this week? Will I mourn on Thursday? Wait, Please don't even broadcast the funeral for me.
Well, Barbara Walters died, so we'll mourn that.
I'll be watching Wednesday. Now we queer up drag culture. Another Florida drag show being investigated by Governor DeSantis.
A drag queen Christmas.
A Christmas drag show making its way through Florida is being investigated by state officials. Drag Queen Christmas 2022 had 2 South Florida stops, Monday night at the Broward Center in Fort Lauderdale and Tuesday night at the James Knight Center in Miami. After Monday's show, state officials releasing a statement. The Department of Business and Professional Regulation is aware of multiple complaints about a sexually explicit performance marketed to children held in Fort Lauderdale on December 26. Exposing children to sexually explicit activity is a crime in Florida, and such action violates the department's licensing standards for operating a business and holding a liquor license. And just before Tuesday's show, this letter from the department. In short, if you allow children to attend the Drag Fans drag show at your facility, you are putting your license.
The administration of Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis has been called out for sending letters to several bars and venues that had planned a holiday that threatened the establishment's liquor licenses. On Wednesday, the state's Department of Business and Professional Regulation sent one of those letters to the Orlando Philharmonic Plaza Foundation. The letter referenced an event organized by the organization that night called a Drag Queen Christmas, featuring noted drag performers Trinity the Tuck, Heidi N Closet, Jasmine Kennedy, Silky Ganache, and Jimbo, along with out pop singer and YouTube personality Todrick Hall. Department of Business and Professional Regulation Secretary Melanie Griffin wrote in the letter, quote, "To avoid action being taken against your liquor licenses, it is your obligation to ensure that minors are prohibited from attending the Drag Fans drag show. If minors are allowed to attend this drag show, the department will take any and all actions available to ensure that you do not pose a threat to minors in the future," end quote. The letter stated that the administration believes the show is sexually explicit. DeSantis and his administration have a significant anti-LGBTQ+ record. The governor signed the state's Don't Say Gay bill into law in March, and his former press secretary openly called LGBTQ+ and their allies groomers. So, we've got friends and anchors at It's Happening Out that were at the show, okay? Mark Moffitt and also Cal Gajraj were at this particular show that they're talking about, all right? They sent me videos, they sent me pictures. There was no children in the audience, okay? There was one woman in the front row that the host, that Nina West, went over to say hello to. She had a medical condition that makes her look smaller than she is and younger than she is. The woman was 35 years old, okay? When they went to go talk to this woman, a heckler started screaming, "Kids should not be in here. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah." And all of a sudden security came. When Nina went to go talk, to the 35-year-old and said to the guy, "She's 35, by that time he was going crazy and security took him out. Mind you, there was a bunch of Proud Boys at the out front with dark black and white masks scaring people.
Right.
Okay, and that's
hiding
okay.
their faces.
And that's okay. There were no children there. And again, if there are children there, it's up to the parent to decide if you're going to take your child there or not.
I also want to point out that I want someone to actually sue Ron DeSantis and display the entire recording of this drag show and show me which part of it is sexually explicit. Because what a drag show is not explicitly sexual. Maybe it contains raunchy language. It contains maybe language that are not suitable exactly for minors. But there's nothing there that's supposedly sexually explicit.
They sang Christmas songs, Bobby.
Exactly.
In drag.
So the question is, if they're going to, if Ron DeSantis administration contend that all drag shows are sexually explicit, then we must challenge that administration to show us what is sexually explicit, because then we can bring this out in the open, say that, this is not sexually explicit. None of this is sexually explicit. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are...
You can go to any concert where anybody curses from stage and there's a bunch of little kids there and that's okay. Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing being showed sexually explicitly on that stage. Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody might drop an F-bomb here and there, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm. We get to the heart of the gaslighting that's going on. Mm-hmm. If we walk out during the day and I say the sky is green, you're going to go, "Oh, that's ridiculous. The sky is not green." But if I say, using a lot of finance and resource and political power, to say the sky is green 157,000 times, at some point you'll begin to go, "Oh, I can see the green tint in the sky. That is what is going on here. To Bobby's challenge, the reason that hasn't happened is because they can't win. They cannot win this.
So they don't want to do that.
They don't want to do that. But that's not what they're trying to do. They're just going to repeat that the sky is green 106,000 times. Because if they sue our house and try to take the liquor license away because it's sexually explicit, they must prove that.
Exactly.
And even if they can get some idiot Trump judge that was appointed, some district judge to do that, then the appeal will continue and continue into a federal court, into a federal district court, and then ultimately to the Supreme Court. If they want to push this to this degree, that's where it will go. And even with a bit of the disappointment of the 6-3 majority, it is really hard to imagine that the 6 majority of the Supreme Court would say that a drag show, this Christmas drag show, is sexually explicit. And the reason why they won't is because nothing could stand up to the standard of the sky is green definition that a drag show is sexually explicit. Language is not sexually explicit. It is defined in a different First Amendment right. You must have a sexual experience. And even Hooters doesn't meet that standard. No. That's as sexually explicit with your clothes on as you can get in what they do with women. Yeah. And Hooters' liquor license is not in any danger for what they do for being sexually explicit. They aren't going to do this. So we're reporting the story not because of the accuracy of there are no children present, but because it doesn't matter anyway. We're reporting the story to show what this fascist governor is doing.
The gaslighting.
The gaslighting of threat.
And it's working though. How? Because there's an 80-year-old person in Kendall, an 80-year-old lady, Cuban lady, that is seeing these things going, look, they're doing that again, and not knowing the premise, not knowing anything that has to do with the facts, but believing it and then voting that way.
So, watching certain news.
So let's call it out. Governor DeSantis, please sue Broward Performing Arts Center. Please do that. I agree with you. You have the right to do that. So sue them. And sue the event venue in Miami-Dade County and sue the event venue in Orange County, Orlando. Do that. And sue the producers of Drag Queen Christmas. And while you're at it, sue the drag queens too. And while you're at it, sue all of the people that bought the tickets. And while you're at it, take the children away from the parents that brought them if they were present. Do all of that, please, because we're going to meet you in court and you're going to be destroyed. That's what's going on here.
Thank God for the court system, really, in that, because this does kind of go to your 157 times saying the sky is green when it's not. For how long have us, either drag queens or gay people, been termed sexually explicit? Our very existence is sexually explicit somehow in their brains.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they just point the finger and make us the enemy for political gain.
Exactly. It's the culture war issue. The one thing before, Amy, we move on to you, the one thing that I wish was happening, this happened all over the holidays, the one thing that I wish was happening is some of the most famous drag queens in the world, I think, should come out swinging about what is going on. Not from a standpoint of ridiculousness, but from a standpoint of reasonableness. And talk about gaslighting, and talk about culture war, and talk about why this legally does not make sense and should not. Because we need those voices to help add to an attorney's voice and to a journalist's voice that goes, the sky is not green. Right. And I hope our drag community locally and nationally comes out to help support that voice.
So next, we queer up trans rights. Florida school district wins federal court appeal over trans bathroom fight.
I feel like this is just making it harder for them and worse for them.
Beth Van Middlesworth says she doesn't understand why the new state rule exists.
I felt that no matter what I did, no matter how I looked, there was always someone who could see straight through my disguise.
Her son Sam, who's transgender, says it's been tough enough using a public bathroom in peace.
I felt unsafe just walking about in the hall because I would get shouted at.
But parents on the other side,
parents should be fully informed,
believe it's about transparency.
After a 5-year legal battle, a sharply divided federal appeals court Friday upheld a St. Johns County School Board policy that prevented a transgender male student from using boys' bathrooms at a high school. The 11th United States Circuit Court of Appeals, in a 7-4 decision, said that the policy did not violate the constitutional equal protection rights of Drew Adams, who was required to use a gender-neutral single-stall bathroom or the girls' bathroom while a student at Nice High School. The court's majority also said that the policy did not violate Title IX, a federal law that prevents discrimination based on sex in education programs. In a 50-page majority opinion, Judge Barbara Lagoa wrote that the school board policy, quote, advances the important governmental objective of protecting students' privacy in school bathrooms. She said the school board's bathroom policy is clearly related to, indeed, is almost a mirror of, its objective of protecting the privacy interests of students to use the bathroom away from the opposite sex and shield their bodies from the opposite sex in the bathroom, which, like a locker room or shower facility, is one of the spaces in a school where such bodily exposure is most likely to occur. Lagoa was joined in the majority opinion by Chief Judge William Pryor and Judges Kevin Newsom, Elizabeth Branch, Britt Grant, Robert Luck, and Andrew Brasher, all of whom were appointed by Republican presidents.
God, where do we begin there? All white, all not understanding what marginalization is. I feel bad for that boy, that poor boy, okay? He's who I'm like struggling and sad about, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, he knows who he is authentically. This is who I am. And now the world is not going to support me and telling me to go to another bathroom. Do we need a third bathroom? Is that where we're at this point? Like, just like, F you, just give us our own bathroom.
I mean, the thing is, well, first of all, the 11th Circuit has always been one of the most conservative in the country. I think the 11th was the one that triggered eventually the Supreme Court taking up Obergefell versus Hodges, because William Pryor explicitly said that gays have no right to marry, and therefore the Supreme Court has stepped in because one circuit says that the gays can marry, one circuit says that they cannot. Right. This is going to and I think that the Second Circuit is going to take up the more liberal side of the rulings, and then eventually this is going to go to the Supreme Court. The question there is whether this court will recognize gender identity as a protected class.
The Supreme Court?
Yeah, the Supreme Court. And well, I mean, Gorsuch did rule in the favor that gender identity cannot be used in discriminating in terms of employment. So according to that logic, why can it be used to discriminate against people in school? Yeah. Because it is gender identity and sexual orientation are all discrimination on the basis of sex. So hopefully he'll see his own logic and consistently rule that way. But of course, that's
I think broadly one of the big issues of the 11th. But by the way, I completely agree with your assessment on the 11th district, and we have to understand what the 11th district is in terms of the conservative nature. They were against the gay marriage decision, which is what brought it to the Supreme Court. One of the things that I think is really interesting about this, and it's not a positive or a negative interpretation, it's that we have evolving attitude and law coming for trans rights in America. And I don't currently yet, my crystal ball is not good enough to say this is what's going to happen. Because just as you said, the Supreme Court is contradictory on this. For the ruling that they did in terms of discrimination against the trans community, frankly surprised me, because I wasn't expecting the Gang of Six in the court to split. And to break from each other on it. And that's encouraging. But the overall thing of, I think what's important here is that trans law is evolving. And when you have people like DeSantis and Governor Abbott in Texas pounding a drum of it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, ultimately it's going to propel us into all kinds of lawsuits that are going to be resolved in the Supreme Court.
Well, not to mention, disgusting acts of domestic terrorism against LGBTQ people. We already seen it in Club Q in Colorado Springs.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I think is very interesting in terms of what we're watching is when I hear this story and I think about who makes this decision and how they get there. When you're in most of the federal judgeships that make decisions like this, they are, like the Supreme Court, protected for life. That the leadership in the 11th is never going to be removed. They're either going to retire or they're going to die. What that means is the selections of those judges
just as important
as the Supreme Court, and we've almost at a 2-year milestone of President Biden.
This year, correct?
Exactly, and this year, for example, Black women, other minority interests as federal judges, he has selected more than every other president in history.
And now that we have a 51-seat majority in the Senate, that will sail through. Now we no longer need to split committee leadership with the Republicans, thanks to 50-50. Now that we have 51-49, we can actually get judges through.
And that observation allows us to connect the most important dots, which is elections do matter. Holding control of the Senate mattered. Having those 51 seats and not relying on the vice president and a single Democratic senator running away out of the way, like Arizona and Kentucky. They have every right to vote however they want. That's not my criticism. But my point is, elections do matter. And when we sit out and go, oh, I'm good, no, we're not.
We're not.
We're not good, because Black women, trans women, lesbian women, et cetera, all hang in the balance of these federal judges that before they even get it to the Supreme Court.
Well, now we queer up education. CDC recommends schools include trans and LGBTQ+ curriculum for student health. Just days after Christmas, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention republished a self-assessment tool urging teachers, administrators, school health staff, and others to become an awesome ally by advocating for LGBTQ+ causes in school. The document cites multiple LGBTQ+ activist groups, including a division of the Southern Poverty Law Center. The CDC's Division of Adolescent and School Health posted on Twitter on Tuesday saying, quote, "School administrators, our LGBTQ inclusivity self-assessment tool can help you quickly gauge inclusivity at your school. See your score today and learn ways to increase inclusivity," end quote. The document, known as the LGBTQ Inclusivity in Schools, a self-assessment tool, appears on the CDC's youth website in a section for schools and under the drop-down Tools for Supporting LGBTQ Youth. The tool includes 4 assessments, one each for all users, administrators, educators, and school health services staff. The tool also includes 3 scores: Commit to Change, Beginning to Break Through, and Awesome Ally. The document notes that it includes resources from non-governmental organizations, quote, focus on improving school inclusivity, and that the resources do not represent the CDC's official opinion. The document further notes that the self-assessment tool is optional, not required, but it touts the document as, here a quote, a focused, reasonable, and user-friendly approach to identify strategies to increase LGBTQ inclusivity in schools, end quote. Well, I stammered through that a bit, but I went to the website to see what all is there, and it is vast. I mean, it is really full on. I mean, they have the terminology and the resources. It's really pretty amazing that this is happening, and it's a positive.
And the sad part is, half the states will not touch it. Or see it. Yeah. I mean, teachers in Florida and Texas and other conservative states are never going to be allowed to even use it.
Or even refer to
it. Or to breathe the words. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, sometimes I think that the federal government needs to get involved more in the national level when it comes to education policy, because we're allowing, the insane, we're allowing the crazy to run the asylum.
And interesting in that the arguments for state decision making allow the states to do it, except the majority of the budgets of the individual state schools are federally generated from federal funds. So the CDC, or the Department of Education, for example, has every right to set policy. The one thing that I think is super interesting here is it finally makes the connection from the CDC. What should jump off the page for people listening to this story that we've just reported is that the CDC is making observation that for health needs of the trans community and a marginally discriminated group, class, which is LGBT, is improved in their health because of what we do in schools. That is, I can't honestly remember a connection that the CDC has made in that level. And that is really valuable because, yes, whole cadres of people are going to start pointing fingers at the CDC and say, see, this is what they do. Well, yes, there's a whole cadre of other people that are going to say, see, this is what they should be doing, which is to make the connection of how do we improve the health care of our children in our schools, and here's some of the things that we can do.
Mental health is health. I mean, a lot of times we don't recognize it, but mental health is part of a healthy life.
Yes. Yeah. And to your point about the states that won't see it, or the schools that won't see it, the CDC has already suffered based on the pandemic, because those are the naysayers. So the CDC is they're not going to pay attention for that reason as well.
And maybe a portion of this will get through, just as long as this report doesn't, for trans or LGBT, require face masks. As long as that doesn't.
Well, and that is that. And now it's time to queer up LGBTQ plus civil rights. The Department of Education documents how culture war lead to record student discrimination in 2022. The Education Department's Office for Civil Rights logged a record number of discrimination complaints in the past year. It is the latest indicator of how the social and political strife roiling the country is reverberating in the nation's schools. Nearly 19,000 complaints were filed to the office in the last fiscal year between October 1st, 2021 and September 30th, 2022, more than double the previous year and breaking the record of 16,000 filed in fiscal year 2016. According to figures provided by the department. The surge reversed the decline in complaints filed in the office under the Trump administration, which rolled back civil rights protections. Officials say the complaints reflect grievances that were amassed during the worst public health crisis in the century and the most divisive civil rights climates in decades. The complaints were logged as schools struggled to recover from pandemic-related closures and add to the declining test scores and growing mental health challenges that displays the fragility in large parts of the country's education system. Catherine Lamont, the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, said the jump in the number of complaints, which have not yet been made public but will be reflected in the officials' offices' annual reports in the coming months, is both encouraging and sobering. Well, for one thing, I don't think we should be surprised that there's a surge in cases. Just because the previous administration decided to not log it at all, just because they want to ignore it, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, the Trump administration made it okay to be mean, to be hateful, to make
they encourage it.
They encouraged it.
They absolutely encourage it. But even more than that, they removed a lot of the civil rights staff from the various departments and basically leave them empty. Of course, there will be less complaints if there's no one there to take them.
Right, that's true. And again, 19,000. I'm surprised that number is so low. You know what I mean? Those are the ones reported. Again, let's be clear on that.
Reported. That's the key word, right? There are some departments. There are some school districts that probably will never report it. There are some school districts that would never allow their students or their teachers or their staff to report it. And those are the the suffering silent ones.
Yeah. I think it's important to draw a parallel to the years that are in this report. We're at an all-time record in this latest reporting of October to October. So the reporting closes in October of 2022. What has happened in 2022? The largest number of attacks on LGBT, the largest number of state laws proposed to attack LGBT and trans, a very significant increase in anti-Semitic increase, a very significant increase in people of color issues, woke conversation, don't be woke in reverse, takes place in 2022. And we have a record number of discrimination complaints filed in our schools as a result of it. Our words and actions matter, and this is where you see it. And then the other important date in this report is, even if everything that we say and suspect is true, that the numbers are artificially lowered because of the Trump administration, they can't hide what the 2016 number reflects. We were at an all-time record in that year, and what was going on for those 12 months. That was the election cycle, not Donald Trump yet, the election cycle of all of the words that were coming out of that campaign's mouth, full of hate and giving you permission to discriminate. Remember the Asian reporter? Remember the handicap attack? Remember all of the attacks
that was Mexicans?
Exactly, that they're murderers and they're dirty, etc. That kind of language of that campaign for that year leading up to the election of that president elect at the time gave permission, and as a result we have an all-time record of discrimination complaints of what's going on in our schools. Of course our 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th grade students are listening to the president, and of course in 2022, of course, the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders are listening to Governor DeSantis and Governor Abbott. The numbers skyrocket because of it. It's direct proof.
It really is. Next, we queer up the USA view. New survey reveals LGBTQ plus Americans 9 times more likely to be victimized by hate crimes. In the recent analysis of the National Crime Victimization Survey, it was found that the odds of being a violent hate crime victim for LGBTQ plus people was 9 times greater than it was for cisgender and straight people from 2017 to 2019. There were an average annual 6.6 violent hate crimes victimizations per 1,000 LGBTQ people during this 3-year period. In contrast, there were 0.6 violent hate crimes victimizations per 1,000 cisgender and straight people. Since 2017, the National Crime Victimization Survey has been documenting sexual orientation and gender identity of respondents. This has allowed us to estimate the rate of hate crimes against LGBTQ plus people for the first time. Another notable finding from the study suggested that violent hate crimes involving LGBTQ plus victims have unique characteristics. Prior research has suggested that LGBTQ plus victims of hate crimes frequently did not know the offender. In the new analysis, 49% of violent hate crimes with LGBTQ plus victims involved an attacker who was a close friend, family member, partner, or former partner. It was also found that LGBTQ plus victims of violent hate crimes were more likely to have physical and psychological symptoms as a result of the attack when compared with LGBTQ plus victims of violent crimes that were not hate crimes. 9 times more. Can you even let that wash over yourself? 9 times more. Now, for me, this spoke volumes, and I am screaming a call to action. So women out there, LGBTQ plus women, okay? This includes trans women, this includes queer women, this includes lesbian women, right? Let's go back to old school times. We came together to the club, we leave together to the club, okay? You're having a problem with your boyfriend, girlfriend, other, whatever it is, you share it with your friends. Let people know what's going on in your life. 49% of times it's someone you know or loved in the past that's gonna commit this awful crime. You know, our family members are under attack. We constantly are telling stories of trans women that are murdered, killed, assaulted, and only maybe a quarter of them are actually ever reported. You know, I'm happy that finally there'll be some kind of statistic that will show people, look, our community's being killed, our community's under attack, and we're not playing around. It really is happening daily.
I mean, these numbers are disturbing to the core.
9 times. I'm getting a taser.
I mean, I mean, look, all of us live in South Florida, and I live right in Wilton, and sometimes we kind of get complacent because we live in the bubble.
Live in the bubble.
Yeah, we live in the bubble because, you know, I live on the main street where there are 20 gay bars. You know, we are safe, we can walk around. And gay businesses, like, and gay businesses, and people are, you know, we're able to hold hands, we're able to be as gay as we could be. But the truth is, outside of that bubble, that's not the case. Yeah.
And this all stems from the same conversation we were having just earlier. It's the talk, the rhetoric, the things that are going on that are advocating, not just allowing, but advocating for violence.
Inciting,
inciting. Yeah.
Saying it's okay.
Which is why these lawsuits are so important. HRC is so important. Center for Lesbian Rights. There's so many organizations that ask for our money. The task force, The task force. There's so many, but they protect us behind the scenes. There are people working full time every day trying to protect us while we sit back and go to the bar.
You know, the news even gets worse. First off, this study report is so important for LGBT. When you just report, this is the first time we've ever been able to make this correlation. The reason I think you respond the way you do is it's the first opportunity for us to say, wait, percentage for percentage, it is 9 times greater of risk. This study is super important to allow us to be able to see that. So great, thank you for that. But the news is even worse because in 6.6 out of 1,000 facing hate crime discrimination, remember that's the entire community of identification, principally of LGB and T. Wait a minute, Dale and Al are discriminated in LGBT in one way and make up part of that 6.6%. But now white guy and white guy compared to Asian guy and woman, your numbers are dramatically higher. Yeah. So when we're talking about 9 times higher, we're talking about on overall average.
That's
really it's probably, I'm totally guessing, for you, 25 times higher. For you, 20 times higher. If you're black, maybe 45 times higher. And don't even get started in the trans community. We're, even in this number, we're okay. Y'all are not. That's what's tragic and stark about this. And by the way, the other thing that is really interesting in this is the number of 0.06%. Now, I reverse exactly what I said. Let's assume that nobody knows that I'm a gay man. My number of 0.06 is impossibly small. And the reason is because I'm a white, straight man. Asian guy gets it the worst. Women get it the worst. Black, cis, straight man gets it the worst. The worst. So in both instances, on both sides, I'm okay if I'm gay. I'm okay if I'm cis. Why? Because I'm a white guy. Now look, those are facts, and this study proves it. That's what we've got to consider in terms of what's really going on in America. It's even worse than the anger that you have. Wow. All right, let's move on. Finally, we queer up South Florida and Florida. Wilton Manors LGBTQ+ Art Gallery grand opening is scheduled for this Saturday, January 7th. The LGBTQ+ community patronizes creative and cultural communities without fail. Needless to say, the community is more than ready to attend the opening ceremony of the newly going to be dedicated LGBTQ+ art gallery of Wilton Manors. Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network supports Wilton Manors and the LGBTQ+ community in many different ways. And one of those is this new gallery opening after the media network moves it from Oakland Park. The center has promised to host continual new exhibitions by a wide range of LGBTQ+ artists, to be led and directed by famous LGBTQ artist and photographer Dennis Dean. The art gallery will focus on varieties of mediums and different aspects of the queer community from an artist perspective. The gallery will be inaugurated this Saturday, January 7th, and the event will be at the new location on Dixie Highway between Pride Center and Wilton Drive from 6 to 9 p.m. The event will include many artists, food, bar, and a ribbon cutting celebration, and we encourage and invite you to attend. It will be the epitome of love and support for queer art and artists from across the world. It's exciting for me. Faye and I were just at an event on Friday where Dennis was there, and he was vibrating a little bit.
He really was. And his hair was standing completely straight up.
Exactly right.
And if you know Dennis, you know his hair.
He's where Hotspots and Happening on Television is behind the gallery, and I'm excited because I liked Oakland Park. I liked it was the conversion of the old Hotspots offices in Oakland Park. They did a great job. Oakland Park's a great community for LGBT, but this is a little different. This is special.
Yes, and I think that they outgrew that spot, Al, and I think that's what it is. This new spot is just so beautiful. It's got an outdoor area also, so it's going to be party time.
It has a big wall where the entire wall rolls up and out it can go.
Oh, to the outdoor area? I'm very happy for Dennis, and because he's been in the biz for a long time. He's incredibly talented, and I don't say that about a lot of photographers, but he's incredibly talented. He's very kind, and he's very forward-thinking, and it's great that he's part of the Hotspots and Happening Out organization. I think it's wonderful.
Photographer Dale Stine just said, no, I don't say that very often.
He does it, so.
That's very funny. You know, and one of the things that I think is great about it, I know Faye is going to be there, and we'll be there, and everyone's invited to come, please. You want to make sure you come. It's wonderful. It is fantastic for community, because it's another step in saying Wilton Manors is the heart of LGBTQ community in South Florida. You operate a business on that drive. You could walk to your business in 5 minutes. It's just an implementation of saying there's a heart, and here's the heart of our South Florida community. And the other thing that I love about it is it's not a bar. It's not a news show. It's not a drag show. It's not another restaurant. It's something different for our community. It just is a new addition. Yes, exactly.
And and I was able to speak to Dennis Dean at length on Friday, and he told me that look out this year. There's going to be a lot of women artists, that they're going to be spotlighting. They're going to do a lot of black and brown queer stuff. So that's what I want to see. That's what I want to be a part of, and they are ready to feed us that. So let's go to the grand opening. Let's have a good time.
I'm really super ecstatic. Now, maybe women artists, you might have gone too far.
No. Bring them on.
No, right, exactly. All right. Amy, we're up for you now.
All right, so next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
Hello, my name is Peter Basuito, also known as My Big Funny Peter. I'm an internationally known comedian and entertainer, and the Sunshine Cathedral is definitely my queer church.
Well, we finished tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News.
LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News. Let's queer up entertainment. From LGBTQ news partner Bear World Magazine, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Their top playlist of 2022. It's curated by Homer Mars from pop to hip-hop. The Bear World playlist is an ever-evolving playlist featuring a number of LGBTQ plus Bear artists. Top 22 poll voting in 2022 was open over the Christmas holiday. The poll with this result: AP Harbor's Fiction, following Osito, Barry Antoinette, The Ocean, Say Gay, Just Say It, The Loneliest Time, Rimpers, Sundown, and He's a Bitch. Songs like Love Loud, I'm a Man and I'm Trans, and Star Walkin' have also made it to the list, along with songs by artists like Mike Maimon, Paul Andrews, Paul Middleton, Probe 7, Sneaky Sea Bear, Tony I, Tosca Bear, and Java Bush, Van Hecht, and Chauncey Dandridge, and Your Funny Uncle. Read more at bearworldmag.com. Hey, Chris Riss, if you're watching. That's my dog.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's clear up sports. From LGBTQ plus news partner, National Review and writer Carolyn Downey. History made as World Boxing Council creates trans division. The World Boxing Council, an international professional boxing organization, announced Thursday that it intends to create a separate category in which transgender athletes can compete in order to protect the women's division, but accommodate men who have undergone sex changes. Mauricio Suleiman, the president of the WBC, revealed the plan in an interview with The Telegraph. Suleiman told the British paper that the WBC will gauge interest in transgender exclusive events in 2023, for which there would likely be unique rules and regulations. Read more at nationalreview.com.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up gay culture. From LGBTQ plus news partner Instinct Magazine and writer Robert Dominic. Who has topped the 100 most handsome faces of 2022? And here's a hint. Zac Efron was number 100. TC Candler has released its annual 100 Most Beautiful and Handsome Faces of the Year. This year's list is heavily dominated by K-pop idols. And can we just say TC Candler knows handsome faces? Let's check out their top 10 picks. And this is surely going to be a treat for gay eyes. And I'll probably mispronounce some of the K-pop stars. Topping the list is our favorite, oh wait, did I say my favorite? Yes. Superman Henry Cavill. And then followed is Stray Kids star Hoo Jin, Dune star Timothy Chalamet, Marvel actor, by the way, another favorite of mine, Chris Hemsworth, Mirror Band member Kuang Tu, Lucian Leviscount, V from BTS, love him too, Vinny Hacker, Nikki, and then rounding out the top 10 is Dean Schneider. It is a great list. You've got to go and look at it of the top 100. And by the way, I told you who was number 100, right? All right. Read more at instinctmagazine.com.
Al, there's some drool coming up here. Well, that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including FayWhat, Dr. Bobby Huen, Amy McGrotty, and Dale Stine. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you good night.
Good night.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ+